right. Hi, I'm Katie Woody. I am the Director of Advancement for the School of Computing and Engineering. I would like to thank you all for joining us for the virtual sneak peek of Bridging the Gender Divide, Toys That Build STEM Skills. This event is co-hosted by the SCE Alumni Association and the National Museum of Toys and Miniatures. In a minute, we will show a sneak peek of the new exhibit. After the video, there'll be a chance for live Q&A with Amy McKune, the curator of the exhibit. Please submit any questions you have via the Q&A feature. And with that being said, I'm going to start the video.
The National Museum of Toys and Miniatures welcomes you to Bridging the Gender Divide, Toys That Build STEM Skills. This exhibit was inspired by looking at toys from the late 19th and early 20th centuries that taught skills that would be useful in careers in science, engineering, and technology. These toys were being marketed almost exclusively to boys, and girls were left out of the story. The exhibit explores the history of these toys and traces how they have evolved to reflect societal values. Hello, I'm Amy McKune, and I'm the Curator of Collections at the National Museum of Toys and Miniatures. I'll be showing you some of the highlights from the exhibit, so let's get started. In addition to using toys from our own collection, we also borrowed toys from 4 other institutions. These additional toys make for a much richer exhibit. The Linda Hall Library, which is located just a few blocks from the museum, loaned the 2 oldest objects in the exhibit. The first is a card game dating from 1795 that teaches the principles of astronomy and geography. There are beautiful illustrations on one side of the cards and definitions on the other side. The other object from Linda Hall Library is a manuscript by Charlotte Lady Brooke Paschal. She illustrated her manuscript with the images and included the definitions on the facing pages. It is thought that she did this to learn more about astronomy and geography. Here are some toys from the 1930s that illustrate the main theme of the exhibit. ArchiToy was an architectural building toy, and you can see on the cover that there is a boy playing with the set and a girl watching. If you look closely, you can see behind her is some doll furniture with a doll. We have 2 sets of Lincoln Logs in the exhibit. You can see the same themes reflected in these toys. In one, the girl is playing with dolls while the boy plays with the Lincoln Logs. In the other, the whole family is pictured, but the boy is the only one playing with the set. The rest of the family, including a sister, are observers. These images send both explicit and implicit messages about these being toys for boys. A great example of the kind of marketing we are talking about in this exhibit is from the A.C. Gilbert Company. This ad shows the variety of toys that they made, many of them based on science and engineering, but they are most known for creating the Erector set. You can see the tagline of "Hello Boys" in the upper left corner of this Erector set, made in 1912 by the Misto Manufacturing Company, the predecessor of the A.C. Gilbert Company. This tagline was used for several decades. Here is a reproduction of 3 pages from the 1922 catalog for the company. For the first 60 pages, there isn't a single toy for sale. These pages have articles including A.C. Gilbert's personal letter to Gilbert boys everywhere and world's famous engineering achievements, focusing on how playing with Gilbert toys would enable boys to grow up and be successful in science and technology careers. The kit for this large-scale erector dirigible, or blimp, was only available for sale between 1929 and 1932. For many years, the A.C. Gilbert Company bought 2-page ads in magazines like Boy's Life and Youth Companion to advertise their toys. Not every company focused on marketing only to boys. The Lego Company is a great example. The early boxes showed both boys and girls playing with their bricks. These advertisements from the 1970s show a girl with the toy she constructed and a boy with the toy he constructed. Interestingly, in the 1990s, Lego started doing more gender-specific kits. The science toy section of the exhibit has several chemistry sets, microscopes, and related toys. AC Gilbert had an impact with this type of toy as well. Here is the Gilbert Chemistry Outfit for Boys. Companies were very aware that these toys were inspiring boys to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. On this box for a ChemCraft chemistry outfit, the tagline is, "Experimenter today, scientist tomorrow." Time and again, boys were being encouraged to explore what their lives would be like as adults. Here are two examples of chemistry sets that were marketed to girls. The Gilbert Lab Technician set for girls reinforced an idea that was prevalent in the 1950s, that women could go into scientific careers, but potentially less prestigious ones than their male counterparts. The Practical Chemist for boys and girls encouraged children to make household products or beauty items rather than more serious scientific pursuits. The HO scale train in the exhibit is not as elaborate as some sets you might see. Its purpose is to demonstrate the type of skills that were required for children to create a model train setup. A child interested in STEM might forego completing the more aesthetic features once the train is running. The unfinished portion of the platform contains equations to figure out the size of the platform, materials needed to construct the platform, and indications of where different elements would be placed. The train does run, but it requires some visitor intervention. When you come, be sure to wave your hand under the motion sensor to watch it go. In order to put the exhibit into context, it is important to understand the types of careers that women were encouraged to pursue in the first half of the 20th century. Careers that were open to women included service careers like secretary or stewardess, or nurturing careers like nursing or teaching. These toys reflect those options. One of the things we did to prepare for the exhibit is to interview several women who are successfully working in STEM careers. One of the most powerful memories came from Shelley Cooper, who has a doctorate in education and is the founder of Diversity Telehealth. During her interview, Shelley told me that she had never seen an erector set. She followed that with this story. In second grade, I had a Caucasian teacher, and we could only play with the little black Sambo game. If all you see is the little black Sambo game, and you don't see the junior architect or the chemistry set or some of the others, then you think, this is all I am supposed to be. The importance of role models was a consistent theme in the interviews. As Marian Wright Edelman said, you can't be what you can't see. In this case, we displayed dolls and a game representing several women role models in STEM careers. The doll on the left was made by the Unemployed Philosophers Guild to represent Marie Curie, who discovered radium and polonium, and is still the only person to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different categories. Mathematician Katherine Johnson's calculations were integral to the early space flights, and her story was told in the 2016 film Hidden Figures. Ms. Johnson worked with Mattel to create a Barbie in her likeness. In 1965, Mattel came out with the Miss Astronaut outfit for Barbie. It would be another 18 years before the first American woman astronaut, Sally Ride, would travel to space. The doll on the left is Sally Ride and is part of Barbie's Inspiring Women series. About 15 years ago, some women working in STEM careers were motivated to develop toys that would inspire young girls to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We've highlighted 3 companies in this case. Ruminate and Goldilocks are both a series of engineering toys. While many laud the efforts to make science and engineering toys specifically for girls, critics fear that making pink technology toys, known as pinkification, may perpetuate harmful stereotypes about inherent differences between boys and girls and reinforce historic associations of STEM with masculinity. As more people began to understand the potential dangers of 20th century chemistry sets, companies ceased producing them. Yellowscope produces modern chemistry sets that are completely safe for children to use. Their tagline is, "Made by scientists who are also moms." While I was researching the exhibit, I learned about so many inspiring women who made major contributions to STEM fields. We decided to create a matching game and coloring book to help our visitors learn about them too. Throughout the exhibit, there are puzzle piece icons to help complete the matching game, and the coloring book can extend learning at home. Thank you for visiting the exhibit virtually. We hope you will be able to visit in person very soon.
Right. So I would like to introduce Laura Taylor. She is the curator of interpretation at the National Museum of Toy and Miniatures. Sorry. And will be helping facilitate the Q&A. And Amy McKune. Amy McKune is the curator at the National Museum of this exhibit at the National Museum of Toy and Miniatures. She's served as the Toy and Miniature Museum's curator of collections since 2017. She holds a BA in anthropology from Kenyon College and an MA in history museum studies from the Cooperstown graduate program, SUNY Oneonta. During Amy's 30-year career, she has served in cultural and collections management positions for 5 museums. In 1996, she played a key role in creating the new Washington State History Museum in Tacoma, Washington, and a 23,000 square foot long-term exhibit on Washington State's history. Amy is drawn to topics related to equity for women, so she welcomed the opportunity to curate this exhibition. Thank you both for joining us today.
Yeah, I was going to start out by just asking Amy to talk a little bit about how we got on this path to create this exhibit.
That's a great question. So we're always looking for toys that we would want to add to the collection. And actually in 2017, came across the Lottie dolls, which are dolls that are based on a girl's body. And the one that I was specifically interested in was an astronomer, the Stargazer doll. And so I mentioned that to Laura, that I thought it would be a great addition to the exhibit. And we started talking about women in these careers and went from there. We also, Laura had conversations with Amy Bix, who is a professor at Iowa State University, and she became involved in the project very early as well.
And I just want to mention, if any of our viewers want to ask questions, go ahead and click on that Q&A button at the bottom. For you personally, you have your BA in anthropology, and then you went on to study in museum studies, and particularly focused on taking care of collections. For you personally, what does this exhibit mean to you? Because you use a lot of STEM skills in your job.
I do. This exhibit really made me think a lot about my own career path. I did very well in school, and I did very well in sciences, but I really didn't pursue them. And I had decided very early that I really wanted to go into the museum field. I mean, I was not yet a teenager, so I don't know that I would have gone that route. But what's been interesting in my career is that I have gravitated toward the areas of the profession that are more grounded in science. And by that, I mean, you know, I understand the effects of light on objects and how to deal with, you know, changes in climate control. So I didn't have to take any graduate sciences to do that. It's mostly been on-the-job training.
We had a live question, a question about how long the exhibit is open. It is open right now, and we are open in a very different schedule at the moment because we just reopened. So we're open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We have 2 different periods of visiting. You can visit from 10 to 12 or from 1 to 3, and you can book tickets in advance online, and we have incorporated a lot of protocols to keep everybody safe. So there's a lot of sanitation involved and that sort of thing. I wanted to ask Amy, in the video you mentioned the dangerousness of some of the toys of the past. And I wondered if you could talk about some of the dangerous toys in the exhibit.
Sure. And actually, just to add on, you gave such a great discussion or such a great summary of how we're open. The exhibit is actually open then through September 5th of 2021. So you have plenty of time to come see it. So chemistry sets actually are one of the categories of toys that were very dangerous. And we have several chemistry sets in the collection. Or in the exhibit. We actually borrowed most of them from the Science History Institute, which is associated with the American Chemical Society in Philadelphia. And they had done an exhibit where they showed several of their chemistry sets. And so I found that online and pursued it. But we borrowed one of, there are two chemistry sets that I'm aware of that had samples of uranium that came out in the 1950s, and they're considered some of the most dangerous toys ever made, if not the most dangerous. And so when we went to borrow that object from the Science History Institute, they were sure to tell me that there were some pieces that wouldn't be able to ship because they had actually done some testing, and they still tested with as having uranium and radioactivity.
And one of my favorites is the glass blowing kit.
Yes, so that has long tubes of glass, several long tubes of glass, and it has basically a little torch that you can use. So it would take some skill to do that carefully.
So we have another question in the Q&A. Do you feel like young girls are still being discouraged from going into STEM fields? Kind of loaded question.
Well, I'm not sure I'm the best position to be able to address that, but I will say that there are so many initiatives now that are happening. Laura and I, more than a year ago, I think, helped mentor during a Girls in Tech Day, where we kind of on the fly had to learn coding so we could help the girls with their coding. And you see these offerings all over the country. So I think that a lot of people are really working to encourage girls to go into STEM. And the end of the exhibit, we talk about that a little bit. Beyond the case that we show in the video, we have a gender neutral toy case. And really it's difficult at this point to find specific toys that really are geared to having girls choose away from STEM.
And I'd like to add to that. I have 3 nieces, and they've all been involved in STEM initiatives. They adore STEM. They adore the projects that they've done. I've been really proud of them, but I do think it's something that we have to keep at it. We can't, just say, oh, we've done enough. It's something that we have to continue to do.
And I know that with the alumni board for the School of Computing and Engineering, we work to try and come up with ways that we can encourage K through 12, and girls to get involved in STEM. So we have another question.
Yeah, I actually came to one of your events where you had some recent graduates who were speaking. It was at the Linda Hall Library, and you had recent graduates speaking to high school students.
Yeah, we do a how to be an engineer series and a how to be a computer science. We work with Linda Hall on that. So yeah. So we have some in the weeds questions. So how many objects are from the museum's collections?
I was going to check on that this morning. I was going to check on that this morning, and I'm sorry I forgot to. We'll make that information available online. I will say we borrowed 23 objects from the Strong, 9 objects from the Science History Institute, 3 from the Kansas Historical Society, and 2 from the Linda Hall Library. And I would say we have several dozen objects from our collection in the exhibit.
And was there a particular object that you wanted for the exhibit that you couldn't source?
Yes, that's a great question. I wanted a Lady Lionel train that was made in 1957-58. And it was actually a train made just like the boys' trains, except it was in pastel colors. And it was considered wildly unsuccessful because girls that actually wanted to play with trains wanted the trains that looked like the ones the boys were playing with, that looked more realistic. This train had a pink engine, And it also had lilac and kind of light blue and yellow cars. So, and they are out there. So I started looking for one, and I came pretty close a couple of times, but and I actually at one point wanted to borrow, had asked the Strong Museum, but that was one object they weren't able to loan for the exhibition. So what they did is provided a reproduction of an ad from that time period that we blew up into a photo enlargement in the exhibit. But we're still looking for a Lady Lionel train. And we love to collect things that have provenance as well. So that would be an even better way if we could find someone who actually had that train and wanted to give it to the museum.
Cool. Another question, what is the purpose of the exhibit? The take-home message for parents, for teachers, and do you have any recommendations in terms of toys for girls?
Well, really the message is that we've come a really long way since the time when these toys were really being marketed to boys. And that's why we bring the story up to the present day, because we really want to show that progress. In terms of toys, I would recommend, I thought the Yellow Scope toys, I think they're wonderful chemistry sets. And I'm on their mailing list now. So they've been, during the entire pandemic, they've been putting experiments that you can do at home on their website, and then also send out email if you're on their mailing list. We also, we got a copy of the Harry Potter coding kit and added it to the collection. And that I know is a very popular toy. And then of course we have a Lego kit, a Lego Boost creative kit, which you can build a lot of things with, including robots. And I think that speaks very strongly to a lot of current robotics clubs have a lot of girls that are involved. I'm sure there are many, many other toys though that fit in this category.
At what time period did there seem to be a shift to less gendered STEM-related toys? It was also interesting that Lego started as unisex, but became more gendered later on.
Right. So there wasn't a consistent change over time. There was a period between World War I and World War II where there was some more marketing to girls. And we've theorized about reasons that would be, especially with things like building toys. It seemed like sometimes the girls were being marketed the toys that built more fanciful buildings as opposed to being considered more a training tool for engineering. I would say in the 70s, when we started, when we were in the midst of the feminist movement, there was definitely a push to introduce more of these toys. But then there was kind of a backslide in the 90s, and then it started up again in the first decade of the 21st century.
So is that where you see kind of Lego switching to having kind of the gendered toys in the 90s, and then they're starting to go back again to... Right.
Yeah, it was in the 90s.
Okay.
And it was really interesting because they had been my model company in terms of their kind of gender neutral marketing up until then.
Was there any way you could find out why they did that? What happened? Was there any reasoning, or they just kind of did it and it just kind of happened?
Probably could. I didn't pursue that question, but I imagine it would be possible to, the company's still around. So I imagine it would be possible to find that out.
Write them a letter and ask why.
Yeah.
Has the museum done or thought about doing a dangerous toys exhibit?
Oh, I'll let Laura speak to that because she actually did curate one of those.
I did back in 2009. And the exhibit, the point of the main takeaway from the exhibit was how childhood had changed over the last 50, 60 years. And so we did include, it was an exhibit called the Dangerous and Daring exhibit for kids. And it did include toys that were dangerous, like lawn darts. So yeah, we have done that. That's not to say we won't touch on that again at some other point. Like in this exhibit, um, there's lots of different ways to touch on that subject.
I think I went to that exhibit because I remember the lawn darts. I think I took my dad, and he was like, "We played with these as kids."
Yeah.
So
I was gonna just throw in a last, maybe not quite last question about the interviews that you did, Amy, and if you could talk a little bit about that. I know you mentioned in the video that there was some common themes revolving around role models, but were there other common themes or things that really influenced you as you were planning the exhibit?
Yeah, so we ended up interviewing, I think it ended up being 9 women who were working in STEM careers. We had contacted about twice that many, but the pandemic hit and things became a little more difficult to get these interviews done. But in addition to the role model theme, I think what was interesting, it kind of went 2 directions. There were some women who saw our questionnaire and felt that they didn't really play with any of these kinds of toys growing up, and that it really didn't have much of an influence on their careers, that they played more outdoors. And so that was kind of interesting. And I hope that when they come and see the exhibit, they might recognize some of the things they actually did play with, and how they might have had some influence. We understand that toys aren't solely responsible for why someone pursues a career in any area, but we just think they have some impact. And then also the idea of mentoring just came up over and over, and it kind of deeper than the idea of you can't be what you can't see. But all of the women had people in their lives who had been really instrumental in helping them in their careers and encouraging them. And they weren't always teachers or parents. They sometimes would be somebody working in the profession. They weren't all women either. And that was interesting as well. So, but I would say every woman had multiple mentors.
I just
we have
wanted
time for
to.
one more question.
Oh, do we have one more?
Oh, yeah, we have time for one more question. Yeah.
Would you talk a little bit about the development of the coloring book?
Yes. So the coloring book actually came about as I was researching the exhibit. I just kept running into these wonderful stories of women in science and engineering and mathematics, and really wanted to be able to share some of those stories. So we started with the idea of a matching game that would be on the wall. And you can see Laura's showing several of the sketches. When we started thinking about the matching game on the wall even, and the idea of getting photographs of the women, most of these photographs are copyright protected. So even to use them in the exhibit was going to be quite costly. So Laura actually had the idea that Meg Hauser, who is our visitor services manager, could do sketches of the women. And then when we had to close and start thinking about what people are going to be willing to touch when they come back to the museum, we changed that to become a coloring book. We had the sketches already that we were going to use on the wall. And that just provided a wonderful way to be able to extend the exhibit beyond the museum.
We have a lot of them, so you have to come and get one.
Is there a way someone who isn't in town, if they wanted one, is there a way that someone could order one or purchase one?
Yeah, well, we haven't figured that out yet, but we will.
Okay.
Yeah, so let us know.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you both for joining us today and giving us this sneak peek into this exciting new exhibit. I can't wait to come and check it out. And thank you all for joining us, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.